Today I present to you a dataset that is intended to support research into the multiple robot distributed SLAM problem. I would like to thank Sudhu Suresh, Dr. Michael Cass, and the Robot Perception Lab for their guidance and support. First, let's discuss the problem of SLAM. SLAM stands for simultaneous, localization, and mapping. Those are some pretty big terms, so let's break them down. Consider Google Maps. When you open Google Maps, the app has already mapped the area around you. It allows you to understand your environment by seeing the roads, shops, and addresses in the area. Now, when you ask Google Maps to take you somewhere, you ask it to tell you where you are and where you are going. You ask it to localize you and your destination. Robots need to do this without prior knowledge of the environment and relying on their own sensing. Sensors may include accelerometers, GPS, cameras, and LiDAR. Onboard sensing may be all the aforementioned sensors except GPS. GPS-denied scenarios occur when the environment causes large amounts of occlusion or multipath interference, which means the robust onboard sensing with SLAM is important. Let's illustrate this point with a real-world example. Suppose you just bought a shiny new autonomous vehicle and you're approaching an intersection. Your car notices that there is a family crossing the street directly ahead and another car is progressing through the intersection. It decides it should wait. Without sensing and mapping the environment for understanding, your car wouldn't have known that there was anything in the intersection. In fact, I would be surprised that you made it off the lot because your car wouldn't even know the road existed. The importance of localization can be illustrated by your new car. If your car is right here, but it thinks it's back here, it may think, oh, I can move forward safely. Then bang, crash, safety compromise, failure mode induced. This is why accurate mapping and localization is important to safety. One approach to improving accuracy is using the views of both robots involved. This is known as distributed multiple robot SLAM, where robots seek to communicate their maps and localize with respect to each other. An important aspect in developing distributed SLAM algorithms is maintaining a safe testing environment. Crashes are highly probable during development, and the cost of hardware can increase significantly. Real-world environments are difficult to reconfigure, and large amounts of monetary and temporal resources are required to reconfigure and maintain the environments. Simulation, on the other hand, offers a safe, easily reconfigurable environment that facilitates rapid algorithmic development. Simulation makes it possible to test a specific situation in multiple different environments. In this work, we test the specific situations where perceptual aliasing is induced. Perceptual aliasing occurs when two different areas look similar or identical to a robot's sensors. This means the robot may think it is back in a place that has already been, even when it is in a new place. For example, these are two pictures taken on two different floors of the Learning Innovation Center at Oregon State University. This may confuse the robot as to which floor it is on if the SLAM algorithm is not sophisticated enough to recognize the change in elevation. But what happens to the robot? The robot uses a pose graph to represent its environment. A pose graph is just as it sounds, a graph of poses where the nodes represent poses and the edges represent measurements between those positions. The SLAM algorithm's job is to estimate these nodes, given the measurements and priors between them. When a robot becomes confused, we call it an erroneous data association, and the pose graph forms a connection between two nodes that should not be connected. This may happen when two nodes look similar and causes the SLAM algorithm to fail. It is important to codify this information into simulation and datasets so that algorithms can be as safe as possible before risking safety in the real world. Previous work has incorporated rigid datasets that do not explicitly attempt to induce the perceptual aliasing. Instead, they modify the robot's pose graph. They tell the robot that two nodes of its pose graph are connected when they aren't. This work attempts to achieve this effect naturally, by building environments that are intended to induce perceptual aliasing while also maintaining extensibility to multiple robot distributed SLAM algorithms. We chose three real-world environments that are likely to induce false data associations, and we modeled them in a Unity simulator with a ROS backend. The three environments we chose were a farm, a garage, and a forest. The farm contains uniformly spaced rows of trees. The uniformity may cause erroneous loop closures between visual spots. Shown are two images that are at opposite corners of the field. The parking garage contains floors with identical layouts. The two middle floors are visually identical, and the first and fourth floors contain similar visual landmarks but have slightly different layouts because they are at the bottom and top. Shown is a view of the second and third floor in identical locations on the floors. The forest was not modeled to explicitly contain visual aliasing. 10,000 trees were randomly generated in 1 square kilometer. This represents a real-world situation similar to search and rescue. In situations like forests, where the ground is typically uneven and trees look similar, odometry drift and similar visual footprints across the environment may occur, thus causing errant loop closures. We simulated a ClearPath Robotics Warthog robot with a sensor suite consisting of a single camera for object detection, a stereo camera, a LiDAR, and an IMU. The robot was started at a predetermined point in the environment and performed a predefined trajectory based on waypoints. Our initial results were only tested on the farm dataset using a single robot with ISAM2 and are intended as baseline measurements due to timeline constraints. However, future work will expand this testing to the 2 other environments. The average absolute trajectory error on the farm dataset was 46.83 meters, averaged over 5 trials. This result is tentative because the robot often had trouble completing the entire dataset, which skewed the results because successful loop closures were not present. The direct result of this may be seen in the z-axis drift shown in the figure on the right. The data shows the results that we expected. However, these results are not due to perceptual aliasing. The robot crashed, which is promising because the drift in the odometry and the environment causes errors in robot navigation, but meant that successful loop closures were not incorporated into this data. These crashes were caused by planning errors that may be solved by tuning the robot's planner for each environment, so that the robot may complete the dataset without crashing. In the future, we hope to extend our testing to all of the datasets, and further expand the datasets to distributed multi-robot SLAM algorithms such as DDFSAM. I would like to thank Rachel Burson and Dr. John Dolan for facilitating the RISC program that ultimately allowed me to explore research and find a passion. And I would like to thank you for taking the time to listen to my work.